This is another Prickly Pears presentation of the Palm Springs Public Library, commemorating the 50th anniversary of the city of Palm Springs. Our guest is Merritt Williams, a Palm Springs pioneer, and the date is May 19th, 1987. Our location is Mr. Williams' residence on Sagebrush in Palm Springs. And I suppose we probably should begin at the beginning, Merritt, and ask you something about yourself and your family. Tell us about your folks.
Well, originally I came from, born and raised in Kansas. And when I was 7 years old, my folks, we all moved to Riverside, California. Mm-hmm. That's where I started the school in Riverside.
I see.
After 4 years of in Riverside, my dad decided I had enough of California, I guess. We still had our farm back in Kansas, so we moved back to Kansas. And my brother John, who came to Palm Springs here before I did sometime, he stayed and he didn't go back to Kansas with us. Of course, that was the time of the First World War, and he was entered the service. And
you were telling us about your brother John when he came to Palm Springs. He got here a little before you did then.
He was here about, I think, 8 years or so. I'm not positive, but I think it was 1919 that he came. But of course, after we moved back to Kansas, and I lived on the farm with my folks and went to school, through grade school and through high school. In my high school, we only lived 6 miles from the school, but I boarded out over at the school because there was a bus line that went out to the various areas, but it interfered with my football and basketball after school activities. So I stayed there, and I recall, I think it was $3.50 a week for room and board. That's what we paid for schooling. Anyway, at the time I graduated, or just before I graduated, my brother wrote to me and wanted to know if I'd like to come to Palm Springs. And he wanted to take off a couple of months for the summertime.
What business was he in at that time?
Well, at that time, he was taking care of the Burge properties, and lived on the Burge properties, if you know where that is. That's Ingleside Inn, was later the Ingleside Inn. You know where it is?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, he lived there, but he also, by that time had accumulated several pieces of property, houses, and that he rented out. He'd started into the real estate business at that time. His first offices were with Raymond Cree,
who later became school superintendent.
Huh?
Who later became school superintendent.
Yeah. But what I did that first year or two was just water the yard, and I just lived there, looked after the Burge properties.
So when did you actually come to Palm Springs for the first time?
Well, that was May 30th, 1927, that I first came out here. I didn't come to Palm Springs. I came by Santa Fe Railroad, and which stopped in San Bernardino.
Right.
So my brother and his family came by and picked me up, and we went up to Adelanto. We never heard of it. Well, it's just the site of Victorville, California. So
it was your brother's letter then that really brought you to Palm Springs for the first time.
My brother, yeah.
How did you feel about coming out here and leaving home?
Well, of course, the fact that he was here made it different, but I wasn't really built to be a farmer, I think. My younger brother, who's still on the farm back there.
Back in Kansas.
He liked the farm better than I did.
What did you think of Palm Springs when you first laid eyes on it?
Well, of course, uh, having lived in Riverside, I knew a little of Southern California, but I'd never been on the desert at all. And when we came, Atlanta's in the high desert up there, and it was hot. It was May 30th, and it must have been 110 or 15 at least. We drove all the way from up there through San Bernardino and down to Palm Springs on Sunday, and that was. So I thought we'd never get here. It's so far.
And there was no air conditioning in cars in those days.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, of course, you were used to high temperatures in Kansas, though. It gets pretty hot in the farms back there, doesn't it, in the summer?
It's a different heat, of course, a more humid heat.
That's true.
Actually, in a way, it's more uncomfortable than Palm Springs is. But the early days in Palm Springs, it's hard to imagine people here today. And the early days, I've seen it 2 weeks, it didn't get below 130. But of course, the humidity would be 5 or 10, not over 5 or 10.
Very dry.
Very. In
That's
fact,
true. Makes a difference.
one of my, besides my job, regular job, I had a franchise to take passengers and express out to the railroad, which was 10 miles out on Highway 111, you know. And so in the summer, for a couple of months, he got out, and I took one trip a day at noon out there. And it was, he had an old Studebaker, 7-passenger Studebaker. And I used to put my feet up on the seat and sit on them because the floorboards would be so hot, they'd actually blister your feet. You'd turn the windows up to keep the air from coming in because it'd burn your face. There's no cooling of any type.
That's true.
It was really hot.
Well, when you got here then, the first thing you did was go to work helping your brother?
No, I worked for him in a way by taking care of the places and stuff, but in the fall, then I went to Riverside and started junior college in Riverside. And at Christmas break, I ran out of funds by that time. So I started looking for a job, and I went into Los Angeles, and about a week I looked for a job, and then I came down here to have Christmas with my brother. And Carl Licken's brother and his, either a cousin or some relative had been working for him here, and they wanted to go back to South Dakota, I think is where they lived, the Lickens. And so he asked if I'd wanted to work for him, so I did and took the job. And of course he was postmaster at the time, although he ran this general store.
Well, he had a contract, I imagine, to
Well,
handle
he had
mail.
this contract to operate the post office. And so that's actually where I started to work. That's all I did was work in the post office. I didn't work in the store at all.
You must have noticed a lot about the store, though, what kind of a store it was.
But the first job I had in the morning when I went in was for about 1 to 2 hours. I sat on the telephone and took Western Union messages over the phone.
Oh.
We had no Western Union office in Palm Springs, and over at Garnett, on the railroad at Garnett. That's where the station was at that time. They would phone the messages over to me, and I'd take them down the shorthand, and then I'd type them up and go out and deliver the messages. See.
Well, how many phones were there in town?
Well, there were very few phones, of course. That's why people didn't telephone as much as they sent wires and things of that sort.
Well, you must have known just about everything going on in town then, if you were taking all those messages.
I can remember just one, not the names or anything, or not exactly about it, but this fellow in New York, his girl was living at the Desert Inn, and he used to send her a wire about every day. It was regular love letters, what it was. See? So I used to take it down and type it and then go over and hand it to her. She never did realize, I don't think, that I
That you knew what it said.
knew all of the messages, what they said.
So you kind of settled down then and went to work in the post office as a postal clerk,
Yeah,
sorting out the mail and
I did just about everything. And
about how many people were there in town when you started doing that?
well, in the summertime, there was just down to practically nothing. I don't know, maybe 50 or 60 people, something like that. There were 58 Indians, I think, at that time. That was a tribe. So they were always here, of course. But of other people, it's just those that had to be here to take care of, look after their properties and water and things like that. I remember for pastime, sometimes we get out, sit on the curb there and cross from the Desert Inn and on Palm Canyon and take a 410 shotgun and shoot bats for
Shoot bats?
yeah, out in the air. And the constable would be with us, he'd shoot them too, you know. We had no chief of police or anything at that time, just a constable.
And of course there wouldn't have been visitors in the summer. They
No, there were no visitors, no traffic to speak of at all. But,
Who were the names that you remember most on your when you were in the post office?
well, some of the well-known people, you mean,
well-known people.
well, most of the very wealthy people all over the United States would come down here for a short time at least. And many of those people had homes here, such as King C. Gillette. He had homes here.
The Gillette safety razor.
Safety razor people. W.K. Kellogg.
The Kellogg's at Battle Creek.
Battle Creek. And Crane, the Crane plumbing people. There were here in Hoover's vacuum, Hoover people. Of course, Tom O'Donnell, who gave the golf course, he built that home up on the hill.
Yeah, that's right, he did.
This stuff. And he built it on a 10-year lease. And after 10 years, it reverted to the Desert Inn. So, but they were nice people.
Now, did you actually deliver mail in those days, or
No.
did you stay in the post office and let them come pick it up?
Everyone had to come to the post office, pick their mail up.
Well, you must have seen everybody in town every day then.
Either a general delivery or a box, that's why they had to come. Of course, the ones we didn't see, the hotel people, they didn't come over. The hotel personnel would come pick the mail up, and they would get it that way. So a lot of those people were movie stars and people like that. Of course, the El Mirador, after it was built in 1927, most of the movie stars went to there. It was more flamboyant.
How much of the space in the store did the post office take up? Was it a big part of it?
Oh no, a very small section at that time. I don't know, about 20 by 30 feet or something like that.
Now, were you running it all by yourself then?
No,
or
no.
was there somebody working with you?
Well,
Henrietta Parker, I know, was...
Henrietta was there part of the time. She was there when I first went there, and she worked. She would work at busy times and like that. But there was Clarence Templeton, who worked for Carl before I came. He was permanent there. And then, of course, each year it grew pretty rapidly, and you'd add people. So, of course, at Christmas time, we'd have 5 or 6 probably people working there, even back in those days. And,
But there was still no home delivery then. It was still...
No,
Company today.
I can't remember the year that we started delivery, but I was assistant postmaster at the time we started mail delivery, and I really laid out the routes and things like that.
Well, you must have liked working for the post office. You stayed for a long time.
I liked it. You meet people, and in fact, my first wife, I met at the general delivery window. She came to pick up her mail. And she was a girl who came out here from Chicago. She lived with her uncle back in Chicago, who was secretary of the Illinois Central Railroad there. But during her, when she was going to school, she hadn't really finished college. She had a breakdown, and they sent her out here. And her deaf father used to come out here before that. And so she lived with her father then when she was out here, and then to go back to Chicago, she lived with her uncle. So I used to go with her for 4 or 5 months of the year. And that went on 7 years before finally we were married.
Was this the only post office in the valley, or did they have one at Indio also?
Oh no, Indio was a larger town than Palm Springs was at that time.
I suppose because of the railroad.
Post office was larger. See, it was a railroad town. So,
but you'd have been the only one in this end of the valley.
Yeah, well, no, Cathedral City had theirs.
Oh, did they have a post office then too?
They had a post office. We were of course, didn't take long before we were the largest post office in the area. But,
you knew a lot of famous people then. Did you ever get to meet people like P.T. Stevens and Harold Hicks?
You'd see them on the street and talk to them, come in. Speaking of kind of wealthy and people with high positions, president of the Chase National Bank, New York City, he used to come out here. He had a home here. William W.T. Baisley. Maybe I shouldn't tell it on him, but he's been gone for years, I know. And before it was all over, why, we were real good friends. But he had a terrible temper. Just everybody in town knew his temper, you know. He was well known for his temper. He came in one time for a addressee only. Registered mail, you know, you can send addressee only, and no one can get that but the one it's addressed to. So he came for a letter for his wife, addressee only, and the clerk wouldn't give it to him. Said she'd have to come pick it up. He got mad, and so he wanted to see his postmaster. I think I was assistant postmaster at the time, but he talked to me about it. I came out and talked to him. Before it was over, he just turned red in the face. He wore a big 10-gallon hat, and he took it off and threw it on the floor and jumped up and down. I was about as mad as I ever saw anybody. But as I say, he later was a good friend of mine.
How much did it cost to mail a first-class letter when you started? Do you remember?
It was 3 cents. And there was a time it was even 2 cents within a city where it was mailed. If there was no delivery, that was it. If there was no delivery and it was in that city, it was only 2 cents, but it wasn't during my time. Just before that.
But 3 cents when you started.
And a postcard was 1 cent.
Well, a penny postcard, that stayed a penny for a long time.
Yeah.
First class didn't, does it?
Huh?
I say first class mail didn't stay 3 cents for a long time.
Oh, well, it stayed for quite a while. Long time.
It used to be very popular, Merritt, for people when they were sending mail back and forth around town to just say village on it. Did they do that in those days?
Oh, well, yeah, it's good, yeah.
Did they think of Palm Springs as a village then?
Yes, it was really referred to as a village. A lot of people referred to it as a village because it was really. It wasn't a very big city, that's for sure. Well, I can't remember the date that it was incorporated, but it finally became incorporated.
Did you get to meet Addie Pearl fairly
Oh,
soon?
yeah. Oh, I knew her well. In fact, during the early days, why, for entertainment, nearly everybody in town got together. The Desert Inn would have a dance, I don't know how often, once a month or something, over on their tennis courts outside.
Oh,
Certain time of the year they would have it, I think. And all the village people would go and
I see.
dance. And
How about her dad? Did you ever meet him or know him?
Who?
Judge McCallum?
no,
Or
he was gone
He was
before I
gone
was here.
before
Yeah.
you came.
I think he was an early postmaster, McCallum.
Oh, he was. Well,
Yeah.
somebody had to be, I guess.
Somebody, anybody that owned a store, you know, just about was stuck with being postmaster at that time.
How was the mail delivered to your post office in those days?
Well, the early days we got it from all from the train. We went out to the station and picked it up. We had much more dispatch and receipt of mail in those days than we have today. Today, just once a day, though we had as high as 4 times a day. We'd send out mail. And,
So you'd have to go out there
Receive mail.
all the way to Garnett 4 times a day?
yeah,
That was quite a trip in those days, wasn't it?
well.
Was
yeah.
Indian Avenue paved then all the way to Garnett?
Oh, yeah, it was paved and all the way out.
But as you said, it was hot.
Narrow road. But we had a mail messenger contractor that did that on a contract basis.
Hmm.
The post office personnel didn't do it. They was trying to contract for a messenger to do that.
Hmm.
But we had real good service in those days. Of course, they had these railway mail post offices. You've heard of those,
Yeah.
RPOs. And the mail was sorted while it was mailed between here and Banning.
Hmm.
It would be sorted before it got to Banning, and we'd get off, be put off at Banning, some of us.
Well, I would
So
imagine
it
there would have
was
been a lot of
bad.
mail to Banning, because Banning was very important to the desert in those days, wasn't it?
What?
I say Banning was very important to the desert down here in those days.
Oh, yes. And Banning was a nice little town.
And I know the children here for a long time went to school in Banning.
Well, before our high schools came down here,
Hmm.
they all had to go to Banning to high school. And in that respect, there was a lot of, well, your social activities too. I mean, in the summer especially, it was so hot here that you'd go up there for to eat and different things like that, and have dances. And so we went to Banning a lot.
Well, the dances at the Desert Inn you mentioned for social activity, were they popular?
But the what?
Were the dances at the Desert Inn popular with people?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was just a thing that Mrs. Kaufman put on as a, you know, it was a free thing. It wasn't a charge or.
Yeah. What did they do for music?
Well, there was a small band. I can't remember where they came from now, where the music did come from.
The locals, maybe?
And sometimes I think we used recording music,
Oh, records.
records.
Well, you'd have had gramophones in those days.
Yeah, well, there was some
With
kind
really
of
great big
record
horns.
player. Yeah. I think a lot of times it was that. They also had dances at the schoolhouse and up on North Plum Canyon, you know.
Well, when you got kind of settled down, did you begin to get more involved in community affairs?
Well, somewhat. I was a lion and an elk, and different things like that. And the Boy Scout, board of the Boy Scouts, and Campfire Girl.
How early were these activities available, like the service clubs, the Lions and the Elks and the Boy Scouts?
Oh, what?
How early were the things like that actively?
Well, it was, I'd say.
I guess I'm thinking Boy Scouts particularly. Did they
The
have
Boy Scouts were real way back in the 30s, I think.
Did they have Boy Scout troop here then?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. And the oldest McKinney boy, I can't think of his name. He was a scout leader.
That
for
would have been
years.
Willard, I think, wouldn't it?
No, older than Willard. Anyway, he was a scout leader here for years, and of Of course, Carl Licken was on Boy Scout board for a long time.
Did that sort of, did Carl's thinking influence some of the things you did a little bit?
Carl?
Did he have some influence on the things you decided to get involved in?
Not really, not a lot. But when you're in working for the government, it was just later on, you see, got in civil service and worked up. And when you're postmaster and even assistant postmaster, you're involved with federal things more, like meetings and district meetings, and until you aren't too much involved in local politics, city politics. So I never was very deeply involved in city politics.
See, I imagine though you remember things like the incorporation.
Oh, well, I remember it, but I don't remember the dates and all that. But the different celebrations that went on, of course, the beginning of the Desert Circus, that was one of the first big things that we did, and rodeo, and everybody got involved in those days. And of course, as you get older, you do that less and less because of your energy, you know.
No.
Today I hardly go out,
True.
hardly ever go out to a parade. Well,
When you came to town, Merritt, had they renamed the streets yet? Was that after they named them, or were you here when they did that?
no, the streets had been renamed to Indian
Names
yeah.
by then, I
That's
see.
right.
That would have made a big difference in the post office.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing. The names of streets, and we used to fight it all the time. Every time a subdivider subdivide a piece of property, put a lot of names on there, maybe duplicates and things like that. In Palm Springs, we have as many as 4 duplication of names. Well, it'll maybe say Circle or Avenue or Street or this or that, but you see that first name and somebody's sorting fast, and it's easy for it to make mistakes. We try to avoid duplication of names as much as possible.
Who were some of your biggest customers in the post office?
Oh, that's hard to say. Of course,
The hotels, I imagine, would have been.
they were big customers, the hotels, and but magazines and of course newspapers and people like that. We handled a lot of that mail.
Even in those days, you had third class.
Had what?
Yeah, I say even in those days, you had third class mail and
Oh yeah, first, second, third, and
Well,
fourth.
what we call junk mail now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's always been a pain in the neck too.
Did you call it junk mail then?
For them, well, we weren't supposed to call it junk mail, but we did.
How long was it after you got here that the post office began to grow with more people?
Well, it was a gradual process, but during the war, I was gone 3.5 years out of the post office. It probably, it jumped immediately after the war, the growth of the town, I think, more, because there were an awful lot of military personnel that came here, either to the Attorney General Hospital or to the airport ferrying command that was located here. The Army built our airport to start with, you know.
You had a story you were going to tell us about when a president came to visit once.
Well, he was, he visited down here with, he lived at Helms down on Smoke Tree area. There wasn't too much of a story about it, but, well, at that time, he came to our church, and I wasn't there at the time, but my brother, he escorted him into the church and all that business. But President Eisenhower, you're to speak of President Eisenhower.
That must have been an interesting
Now,
time.
he's the one that appointed me as postmaster. I was received my appointment under President Eisenhower.
Mm-hmm.
And he used to come regularly, I think, after he became postmaster, but he was a special friend of this Helms, who had this home out in Smoke Tree, and that was the most, they thought, most protected place that they could find because it was had a fence all around it.
You were going to tell about the visit, too, of another very flamboyant person, Jimmy Walker, who came to visit Palm Springs.
That was way back in the early 30s anyway. And Jimmy Walker, Pears from New York, he came out here to stay for a day or two, I guess. So some of the, I don't know who thought it up, but I don't think we had a Chamber of Commerce then. And Mayor Bogert,
Mm-hmm.
he was at that time, I think, PR, whatever you call it.
Working for the Almirador. Right?
So there was a group of 5 or 6 or 10 of them took horses out to the railroad station and got on their horses and put masks on, or tied their handkerchiefs around their face, acted like bandits or train robbers, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So the train master, station master, had been told about it, and of course the conductor, engineer knew about it. When the train pulled up, these fellas rode up on a horse shooting their guns in the air and all that. And this, it was in the New York papers and all over the country about the holdup.
What did he think of that?
Oh, I don't know.
That must have been a pretty interesting thing.
Yeah.
Now, you could do things like that in a small town, though,
Yeah.
couldn't you?
Well, that's it. You can't do it in large cities, but most anything went in Palm Springs in those days. It was so small.
Well, what happened in the post office after Carl Licken stopped being the actual postmaster? Who was the first postmaster then?
That was Clarence Templeton, who had been helping him. He was there when I went. See, he became postmaster, and Clarence Templeton.
How long had he been here, do you know, before he became postmaster?
Me?
No, Clarence
Clarence.
Templeton.
Oh, I don't know. He'd been there a few years anyway before I was. But then when he went out, even the postmaster's job then was a real political job. You could, impossible almost to get a Republican to get it if the Democrats were in, and vice versa. Well, in 1934, when Roosevelt came in, didn't he, 34? About that time, they changed postmasters. Templeton had to leave. He was a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
So Pop Gorham, who a lot of people knew, he was well known, well liked. So,
Was he a local
yeah,
person?
He'd been managing the Palm Springs builder supply for the Hickses
Oh.
at that time. So I don't know why he ran for the job, but he did and got it. And,
So Pop Gorham then.
Pop Gorham, and he was postmaster for, I don't know, well, all through the Democratic administration, at least,
I see.
and until from 34 to 54, would it be? Yeah. 34 to 50, 20 years he was postmaster.
And during this period of time, you were the assistant.
I was assistant for
postmaster.
15 years at that time.
And then when he left, you became postmaster?
Well, yes, of course, it's changing administration again, you see.
Yeah, right.
Eisenhower came in.
Oh,
so-
you had the right kind of politics.
Yeah, I really wasn't very political, and there was 2 or 3 politicians that tried to get the job.
Were there friends you had at the time who kind of helped you a little bit, wrote letters for you, or?
Oh yeah, I mean, not being a politician though, there were solid Republicans in town. They had to support another man, Al Hoover, who was a real hard-working Republican Party man, see, and like Melba Bennett and Earl Kaufman and can't think of his name. Power company.
Oh, Francis Crocker?
Francis.
Mm-hmm.
All those were the mainstays of the party in town, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
when you have a worker there, they almost have to back them, and which they did. But I didn't need their backing, I guess. Congressman Phillips was our congressman at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you remember him or not. John Phillips. He's dead now.
I know.
And he supported me. Well, he told me, he said he couldn't do anything. He said, you got to go back down to Palm Springs and woo those 6 women on the local committee, Republican Central Committee. So that's what you have to do anyway.
Well, you must have wooed them pretty well.
Yeah. I went to Riverside, who was a Riverside County chairman of the party, and I was pretty friendly with him, and he didn't like the other fellow too well. So anyway, actually, Earl Huff brought a man in and introduced him to me one day as a lawyer from Los Angeles, but he used to come down here a lot. He was really powerful in the Republican Party. Earl may have had as much to do with it, my appointment, as anybody.
No, you were really in the running, though.
Huh?
You were in the running.
Yeah.
Well, by then, the post office was your career, of course.
Yeah, well, we were first class then. And it was, not that it was worth fighting over that much, but it was a fair job.
You must have liked it. When you came to town, your brother was involved in real estate. How was he doing in business in those days? Did he do pretty well?
Well, he's always done well since the first time he came to town. He came here with nothing at all. But Jack was somebody, he's entirely different than I am. I'm the conservative. Well, he was conservative in a way, but he was kind of a plunger too.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I told you earlier, he bought houses as fast as he could.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, in the early days, he went in debt just as deep as he could go. If you go to any bank around to borrow, of course there were no banks in Palm Springs then. You had to go to Riverside, San Bernardino, Redlands, and places like that. But he kept in debt up to the limit all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, it all paid off well. Of course, I'm sorry, maybe the drive may have helped his early death.
Well,
too, you know.
you've always been a pretty close family, though, haven't
Oh,
you?
yeah. I lived with them for several years when I first came here, most of the time. Of course, Don, I'm real close with Don and his family.
Mm-hmm.
But, of course, Jack's wise investments and so forth really piled up, and now it's quite an estate for them.
Well, he invested in real estate himself. He didn't just sell other people's real estate. I know he did a lot in developing the industrial property out on Ramon Road.
Yeah, well, that was his biggest.
There's a street out there named Williams.
Yeah, Eugene. That's one of the boys' name, and Williams Road. And they still own most of that industrial property out there.
When did you start receiving airmail down here?
Well, again, I can't remember the date, but they made quite a celebration out of that.
Did they have an airport here when you came to town of any kind?
Well, there was a little airport on Section 14. A fellow by the name of Wes Gray, he owned the Central Hotel down on 300 block Palm Canyon, right on the Palm Canyon Drive. And he was war flyer and flew in the war. There's one other fellow that was an Army pilot that, I can't think of his name, he started school pilot, taught flying and stuff. So it was a very small little strip, but it wasn't until the Army came in and built the big port that we had an airport of any size.
So prior to that time, then there wouldn't have been any direct airmail delivery down here.
When we got our airmail, we had the big port.
Mm-hmm. That didn't happen until they enlarged the airport,
Yeah,
though.
after the war. Yeah, during the war. But of course, after we had the airport, then we received all the airmail from the valley. A truck brought the mail up from Indio and Coachella and all the cities between here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd send it out from here by air. They speeded it up. Of course, it's changed so much since I've been in here. It's been 23 years since I was postmaster.
Yeah, that's true. As a young man, Merritt, when you first came to town and kind of got settled in, what did you like to do the most for fun? Did you have any hobbies you liked, or people that you especially liked?
Well, of course, the golf I started way back soon after I came here, I guess, playing golf. And I've played golf. I never was real good at it, but weekend golfer, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Flavin, I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard of
Oh, yeah.
Bob Flavin.
Sure.
That's his son, his father. There was a golf course up at Idlewild in the early days, and Mike was a pro up there. So in the summertime, I used to have a house, rent a house up there for 2 or 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Go there in the summer. I used to go up and play with Mike, and he gave me the only lessons I ever had, I guess.
Well, now he was the pro also at the old El Mirador course, I think, when P.T.
Yeah, he
Stevens
probably
built it.
was. I guess he was. Yeah, Mike
so,
was.
so he was down here in the desert then, too.
Yeah, he was here in the desert until he died. A long time, quite a while.
Who did you play with? Who were your
Well,
partners?
those days, Harry Brott, he was a druggist here,
Mm-hmm.
and the Catholic priest. Who else was it? We used to go over to Gilman Hot Springs and play golf every Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Regular foursome?
Huh?
A regular foursome?
Yeah, we had mostly the same ones. And then later, of course, I got to playing. I've played for 25 years or more with the foursome here. Well, it started out, I don't know if you knew, Dick Vanderveer. He was the manager of the El Merritt Hotel for a period of 3 or 4 years. So when, I can't think of the names that owned it anyway. Dick and Chuck McDonald of the water company. You know Chuck, don't you? And Charles McFarland that had the bicycles. Dick and those two and myself played for years together.
Did you? Did they ever have little tournaments down here in town of any kind that you could play in?
Oh, well, yeah, the different small tournaments. I never was too great at.
You weren't a
I
tournament.
never earned in any big tournaments.
Mm-hmm. How about shows? Do you remember when Earl started the movies down here?
Who?
Earl Strebe, when he started movies?
Yeah. Well, he was a bellboy at the Desert Inn to start with, and he started showing movies there in the Desert Inn itself. That's where he first started. And then, of course, they built that theater there on Zadie Bunker's property, you know, where it's been for years, the Palm Springs Theater.
Mm-hmm.
And he started that, and he had a place in Lake Arrowhead in the summer. He had a theater up there in the Idlewild. He had a theater there. Yeah, I've known Earl ever since he came. I can't remember if Earl was here before I was or after. Do you know when Earl first came?
I really don't know. I think it was the early 20s, or at least the middle 20s.
I don't think Earl was, of course, his wife, Bunker girl.
Mm-hmm.
She was here when I came. She was just a young girl.
Mhm.
And
What did you do when you wanted to go out to eat for dinner? Maybe where were the good places to go?
well, in the summertime, we used to go up to Whitewater, called Bridgehaven. You know where Whitewater station is? One side of the road was Whitewater, the other side is Bridgehaven. And the people by the name of Johnson's, and they had a restaurant and store and all sorts of stuff. But just to cool off, we used to go out there to eat, and they did have good food too.
Mhm.
But
How about here in town? Were there any special restaurants you liked? Had Jack Freeman opened his bar, his Desert Grill by that time?
no,
Or would that have been that? I think that would have been the early 30s.
yeah, I can't think of this.
Or in Irwin
Oh,
Shoe.
Harry Matasio
Oh.
had that place. They called it Harry's Pool Hall,
Mhm.
but it was the restaurant. Later became the Dunes on 300 block North Palm Canyon. They called it the Dunes.
Yeah.
That's when Wertheimer, I guess, bought it. That's why they call it the Dunes.
Mhm.
In the early days, speaking about gambling, why Wertheimer used to run a gambling place out here on Date Palm
Date
Drive, just off of Date Palm Drive. It was out in the desert area. It wasn't within the city. But he used to do a lot good for the city, just to keep it and good with everybody, you know. in the county.
Did the folks who ran the gambling places come in to pick up their mail too,
Oh yeah.
like everybody else?
Like everybody else. If you went out there, I had some friends that were quite wealthy. She used to like to gamble, and she used to take my wife and I out there to eat, you know. We'd go out and eat. Of course, local people weren't allowed to gamble.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah. That was also to protect his reputation. He didn't want people complaining, see. So we'd go out there and have dinner, which is a nice dinner. And she'd gamble, and she'd always give her all her chips back to the dealers or something like that. She was wealthy.
Mhm.
But that was one place, a nice place to eat. Of course, the hotels is where Desert Inn or the El Mirador, the Oasis
Mhm.
was the best places really to eat.
Do you remember the Dollhouse when it was
Oh.
downtown before
Yeah.
before it moved?
Oh yeah, the Dollhouse. That was a very popular place.
Mhm.
In fact, I don't know why I should tell this. She's still alive. And Dorothy Lamour. There was a place out there called Stables, I guess it was, or something. They used to
I don't know about
dance. And we were out at the Stables, another kid and I, and this dance out there, and we saw a couple of pretty girls sitting over there.
Mhm.
We just decided about it. Dorothy Lamour and Hedy Lamar's cousin, so it was. So he said to me, he said, let's go dance with him. So it turned out that I danced with Dorothy Lamour,
Oh.
and he was the other one, the cousin. And after we got through dancing, they wanted to go get something to eat. Suggested going to the Dollhouse, so we took them over to the Dollhouse. She wouldn't remember it, I'm sure, but
Was she a good dancer?
oh man, I never got over that beautiful color of her skin. All of her back was bare, clear to her waist. See?
Oh.
That's the way she dressed. But she was a beautiful woman.
I was going to ask if she was wearing a sarong.
Well, it's bare to the waist.
Sort of like a
to the
sarong.
back, you know. Yeah.
That must have been fun for you.
Well, it was exciting, but I'd say that just to show that those people mingled among the crowds,
Mhm.
act just like ordinary people.
Did you get to know any other personalities like that?
Well, Paul Lucas, I don't know if you remember him?
Oh, yes.
A lot of people now wouldn't. He stayed at the Palm Springs Hotel, which is on about the 300 block. It's where that new hotel is downtown now, you know.
Mhm.
And he was the same nationality as they are, Hungarian, I guess it was. That's the Foldises, they owned the hotel. Well, my wife's father and my wife, part of the time I married her, they stayed there at the hotel a couple of years, and I used to eat there a lot on my future father-in-law, you see. So Paul Lucas also lived there a lot.
Mhm.
I was jealous of him a time or two because he used to take Roxy on a plane ride. He had his own planes.
Oh.
So, but he was there all the time. And another couple that was around a lot, and everybody knew, was Bill and Mary Gargans. Remember them?
Yeah, very well.
They were, of course.
Well, you must have known whenever famous people would come to town to stay in the hotels for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Because they would get their mail.
Yeah, well, you knew all those, but you didn't pay attention to it. I mean, actually, the people who lived here weren't very impressed with the Hollywood people.
I suppose not in those days. Although, when I talked to your nephew, he was telling us about the time that he was in an Easter egg hunt that Nellie Kaufman organized. And,
Oh, yeah.
Shirley Temple's press agent arranged for Shirley to find most of the Easter eggs.
She always stayed at the Desert
When that-
Inn, I know, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's right.
What else do you remember about what you did for fun, or the things you were involved in those early days?
Well,
I know one question I wanted to ask you was Carl a good boss?
oh, he was probably the best man that I ever knew, really.
Mm.
A wonderful person. He was kind and considerate, and I don't think he ever criticized or bought anybody out in his life. He's just a great person.
Mhm.
So, of course, my other boss, Pop Gorham, was just as good too. So both of my bosses were really great people.
How about horseback riding? Did you ever get involved in that?
Not a lot. I used to, of course, that was one of the things, entertainment in the early days, was these horseback rides and cookouts, you know. They take hay racks and load up the hay rack with people and go out in the canyon and have steak bakes and things like that.
That must have been fun.
That was, we did that quite a bit. Of course, the Desert Inn did it for their guests, and they had a regular place that they went up on Pines to Palms Highway,
Mhm.
back of Palm Desert there.
Sure.
But different organizations used to do that too, and churches and
Mhm.
groups would go out.
What happened when you started delivering mail? I know one thing you mentioned before we went on was the big flood. I think it was in 1938. Did that really disrupt the town?
Well, it came to a standstill for about 3 days, completely. We didn't no way to get food in or out, or even messages in or out.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember it was 3 days before we could get any mail out of town, and I took that mail out myself, went out Indian Avenue to the highway, but the water then was running up on my running board, up as high as my running board.
Through the Whitewater Channel?
Yeah, through that Whitewater Channel there, clear across for several hundred yards across there, the water.
Well, now you mentioned that flood washed out the railroad tracks too.
Railroad tracks. And the bridge, of course, since I've been here, that bridge has been washed out twice and then damaged once later. The bridge, you know, Windy Point, you call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just completely washed out. This Tockwitz Bridge has been in third location that I know of since I've been here. It was washed out.
Yeah.
But that that time and one other time the water was so bad that we had no power for a day or two. Real interruptions. Of course, in those days, today our power, I suppose our supply comes from 3 or 4 different angles and different ways that they have of protecting against complete blackouts like that.
But I've heard it was the Southern Sierras Power Company that...
That was the one that Francis started with there.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we had first.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, in those days it was good service as far as it went, you know.
I'm sure it was. Well, Merritt, is there anything else you thought about that you think would be interesting for people to know about those early days? The things you did and the places you went?
Well,
I know you made a few notes there.
To get out of the heat, you see, we had no cooling whatsoever except a fan, which didn't do any good blowing hot air.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible to sleep at night. So many nights, I recall that 4 or 5 of us would get in the car and go as far as Los Angeles playing miniature golf.
Oh!
You know, the days of fad of the miniature golf courses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you'd pick out different ones you hadn't played before, but you'd just come back in time to go to work the next morning is about it. And you get an hour of sleep maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just to get out of the heat. And of course, very seldom during the 2 months of the summer did we ever stay in Palm Springs. You'd get out entirely.
Mm-hmm. I notice you've got a lot of names down here. The O'Donnells, Hicks, and Warren Penny, and
yeah, he was Merritt or Warren Penny.
Zadie Bunker. Did you get to know Zadie very well?
Oh yeah, I never like her brother and sister.
She must have been
practically,
like
and her whole family. Zadie, of course, was the Goffs, all of the Goff family too, and their parents were Dawsons, called Dawsons, Dad Dawson, before the Bunkers.
Hmm. And an interesting time.
About the Indians, though, there were 2 different chiefs that I knew. One of them, the oldest one, is Francisco Potencio.
Mm-hmm.
He was their Indian chief, and later Ramon Manuel. And they were completely different characters, but they were just characters. I remember one time on Section 14, where all the Indians lived there, and they have this big round meeting house that they had, a thatched roof, palms and everything. Once a year, for about a week, they celebrated something, whatever it was, but they used to play a game in there called, I think it was called Peon, P-E-O-N, Peon. But they sat in a big circle. Very few people were ever invited to come in and see it, but I can't remember who the other one was with me, but one of them let us come in to watch their game one night. We stood and watched it, told us don't dare laugh about anything because it was a serious deal. They sit on the ground and mumble some kind of a song, don't say words, just hum, 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 to the beat of a drum. But they pass a pea from one to the other around the circle, and then when the music stops, why, somebody has that, and somewhere or another, if you guess who has it or something, you win.
Oh.
That's their game.
And they let you come and watch them?
We just watched it. That was right there.
Well, I suppose you handled their mail too?
Oh yeah, they got mail. Most of them had mailboxes or general delivery.
Well, I can't think of anybody who was in a better place to know what was going on in town than you were,
Yeah.
or at least knowing who was here.
We didn't really, of course, mingle in society so much. Yeah, it took more money than I had to
Yeah, I suppose so.
do that. There were a lot of people did do it without money, but it wasn't my style exactly. But you knew what was going on, all right. The early settlers, though, should be credited with Palm Springs' start anyway. It was like the Stevenses and the Hickses, then the Boyds and the Bennetts. Of course, McKinney's, they've been here forever, I guess.
Just about.
McManus's, of course, Pearl and Austin. They had a lot of property here, which their father before them had left them. And then, of course, Kaufmans came and built that hotel, which is the mainstay of the town, really the core of it for many years, of course.
I noticed you got Earl C. Anthony's name down there, too.
Well, he furnished that lighted cross up on the hill, mountain, and paid for the electricity for several years. But he was, he lived here in the early days.
He was a very well-known Southern California car dealer.
Yeah, yeah. Harry Metasio, of course, the early days had that Dunes Club, which is Harry's pool hall, we call it.
Well, Merritt, thank you for spending a little time with us this morning. I appreciate it, to share with us a few of your memories of those old days. I think you had a lot of fun.
Well, we did, really, of course. Shouldn't say it maybe, but it's more fun than it is today. Maybe it's because I was younger and
that might have had something to do
more
with it.
too.
But it's a different kind of town now, too.
Yeah, it is.
You've seen it change a lot.
Done pretty good with it, actually, to develop it as it has. It's a beautiful place. I
Well-
appreciate it, Bill, for you coming.
Well, it's been fun to talk to one of the first people to work in the post office here and watch that post office grow and develop and serve the community over the years. You really saw, as few people could, I think, the growth and development of the area.
Yeah.
Because as your postal service had to increase and expand and try to keep up, and it has changed.
It's sad to realize that so many of those people aren't here anymore.
Oh, that's true. But thank you for sharing with us. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Merritt Williams, one of the first folks in the post office here in Palm Springs, a gentleman who came to this town in 1927 and who